Berlin was originally settled by Mennonites from Pennsylvania in the late 18th century. In 1833, the settlement was designated Berlin as a complement to the German descendancy of the Mennonites. Berlin continued to grow, both as a center of German immigration in Canada and as an agricultural community through to the end of the 19th century. By the time it was officially designated as a city in 1912, it was also a center of manufacturing and industry with a population of approximately 15,000, 70% of which could claim German descendants. It is no surprise that it was known as the German capital of Canada. Within 3 weeks of the outbreak of war in August 1914, the first sign of anti-German sentiment was the removal of a bust of German Kaiser Wilhelm I from its pediment in Victoria Park. After being dumped in the park's lake, several upstanding citizens brought it back up, but decided to store it in the local Concordia Club for safekeeping. The Concordia Club's charter states that it is first and foremost dedicated to the preservation of German language, custom, and traditions, so it was an obvious target for local anti-German sentiment. By 1915, the local 118th Battalion had started recruitment, and at one point the Concordia Club was broken into by members of that battalion while in uniform, and its contents burned in the street. On March 9, 1916, the New York Times published an article concerning two Lutheran pastors from Berlin. Both of them had resigned from local churches over controversies concerning their supposed pro-German attitude expressed in their sermons. Specifically, Reverend C. Reinhold Tappert was confronted at his home in the middle of the night by members of the 118th Battalion. After refusing to open his door, it was broken down and he was dragged from his home into the street while being hit and slapped. He was then taken to the local barracks, where he was forced to sing the English national hymn. It just so happened that the Reverend Tappert was an American citizen, and he lodged a formal complaint to military officials from the American consulate in Hamilton. He had received a black eye and a head wound requiring several stitches on the night that he was dragged away. He refused to live in Canada after that point. Another clue to the events that were occurring in Berlin in the first years of the war is the diary of Berlin citizen L.J. Breithaupt, which mentions that his own home was damaged by soldiers. He had previously publicly attended, as a dissenting voice, an important meeting that was to decide the future of Berlin. On February 11, 1916, a meeting took place in the city's town hall. The meeting was to decide whether to change the name of Berlin to something that was, quote, more in keeping with national sentiment. The name is no longer an honor to Canada, and the city owes it to Canada and the British Empire that no longer should the name of the capital of Germany be tolerated here. The final comment in the article states that the change in name would be, quote, to good purpose if the young men of the city should rally around the colors and fill up the ranks of the 118th Battalion. In the following months, debate raged over the name change. After the quick-to-respond approval and implicit endorsement of the idea by the Ontario legislature, the campaign for a new name surged ahead. The city council appointed a special committee to come up with a list of names. Significantly, most of the names referred to one of three distinct categories: names that evoke Canada, names that appeal to the Empire, and names that would help to reverse the bad rap that the city was supposedly getting for making products labeled Made in Berlin. The date for the final referendum to choose the name was set for June 1916. And then, the former British Secretary of State Horatio Herbert Kitchener died. As the news spread across the Commonwealth, his name was added at the last minute to the ballot for Berlin's new name. Later that month, the results of the referendum were revealed. Of the population of 15,000, a total of 1,055 turned out, or about 7%. Of these, 163, or 15%, were spoiled. Brock received 335 votes. Kitchener received 346. Thus, Berlin became Kitchener as a result of 11 votes, or about 1% of the submitted ballots. The new name took effect on September 1st, 1916. After the results were revealed, the local newspaper The News Record noted that, quote, the outstanding feature of the referendum was the absolute indifference displayed by the ratepayers. Not long after the referendum, a petition was organized by citizens to stop the new name, which received 2,000 signatures. The Legislative Assembly of Ontario either did not think that there were enough signatures, or that changing the name was too politically important to stop. In either case, it was ignored. Many say that it was the town's Board of Trade and City Council that pushed the change through, perhaps over fears of having Berlin's products boycotted. The town was certainly divided over German identity, which sometimes resulted in violent episodes. Under these circumstances, it would seem fair to say that indifferent did not best describe those who decided not to vote. After all, there was little direct action that could be taken to prevent the change. Today, as much as 25% of Kitchener is still descended from German roots. The Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest is the largest outside of Germany. When the town of Kitchener got its new city hall in the 1990s, there was a movement to have the civic square named Berlin Square, indicating that although there may no longer be any hurt feelings, Berlin is still remembered.